January Schoolhouse. This is so exciting. So thank you all for your excitement and your participation. I'm Debbie Stark. I'm the creative director at Free Spirit Fabrics. And we are here to meet Billy Roo, who is a new artist with Free Spirit. He started during the pandemic, so we are actually introducing collection number 3. So you'll get to see a little sneak peek of his work, but I kind of wanted to bring you up to speed on how he came to be a Free Spirit designer. He is a quilter, and he decided he wanted to investigate how does he start to design fabric for quilting. So he called Tula Payne. And Tula said, well, I think you should reach out to Free Spirit and talk to Debbie Stark. So lo and behold, he reached out to me. He knew all of my background.
It was a little creepy, I know, I'm sorry.
How did you know that? I guess there's more information out there on you than you need to know. I don't know. No, he was really, it was absolutely adorable. And we hit it off right away. I saw his work and I just thought it was so beautiful. So while Billy is a quilter, he is an architect first. And his work is unbelievable. So I'm going to read you a little bit of his background. William Rue is an architect, artist, and quilter whose creative pursuits explore the intersections between abstraction and the built environment. He maintains an architectural practice in New York City and is known for his thoughtfully considered projects that marry creativity with pragmatism. William's interest in quilting and fabric design was sparked when he attended a free quilting workshop with his sister Yvonne, who is here.
Yvonne.
At her local library in Victoria, Texas. He was intrigued by how simple materials and fabrication techniques were used to create compositions of rich geometric complexity and profound meaning. Color, pattern, rhythm, hierarchy, and logic. The language of quilts is the language of architecture. He was instantly hooked, and he bought his first sewing machine immediately upon returning to New York City. His architecture office overlooking Madison Park transformed a night into a quilting studio where friends and clients would often stop by to examine his latest design experiments. And his first collection was called Madison 1. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it.
Yeah.
It was gorgeous. I could picture sitting in his office and seeing the light reflect from the building next to him. So it was really beautiful. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Billy because he has so much good stuff to share with us today.
Okay.
So welcome, Billy.
Hi. Okay, so today we're going to kind of do it a little differently. I'm going to talk like 3 minutes. We're going to turn the lights down. I'm going to show you some slides, and then we're going to talk more about the collection. Is that cool with everybody? Yes. Okay, so like you said, I went to the local library in Victoria, Texas. Even though I lived in New York for 25 years, I'm from a small town called Port Lavaca. It's about 70 miles from where we're standing. Okay, so I'm a local guy, you know, and just like you guys. And I just want to point out at the beginning, this is the second quilt I made. And this, I didn't invent this pattern. You all have seen this pattern, right? This hypercolor triangle. But this is something that I was doing in my office where I was just buying the solids and seeing what I can do abstractly. After that, I had bought so much fabric, as you could imagine. And I was making these things out of scraps. So that took me 3 weeks. This took me 3 hours. And the sewing on this is horrible. But if you ask, Yvonne is much better sewer. So I do it fast and dirty, and she's like very meticulous, and we're gonna look at some of her designs, things that she's invented herself, like this one. And we're gonna get to that. But this quilt was made at the end of COVID, the first time we saw our family again. And we call this the year without a Santa Claus. And because this is based on that little cartoon we would watch when we were kids, with the little snow miser and all that. And so it was something we made together as a family with my 86-year-old mother, kind of reconvening how things are over. We're done. And you'll hear me talk about things in a kind of a sentimental way. And that's on purpose. You know, I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers, and my mother used to sew our clothes when we were kids. So the idea of going to a fabric store and picking the fabric that your mom's makes your shirt where you go to first grade for, that's our history. And so it's the coolest thing when my mom will go to a fabric store now and see the edge of the, you know, where it sees the selvage and it has your name on it. So it is kind of a family thing, and it's something we do together. And it's not just, hey, it's this guy in New York designing fabric who's an architect. So it's important to kind of understand that background. So we're gonna turn the light off, and let's see if this color pops. Let's see. Oh, good. Okay. So during the pandemic, things were a little slow in New York. So I decided to go to Oklahoma to teach architecture at the University of Oklahoma for a semester. And during that time, I said, you know what we should do? Let's make a collection based on the drawings that you make in architecture school. And there's a wonderful client of mine. His name is John Pei. He's an artist from Korea. And he says, Billy, artist, what happened? Oh, it has sensors? Motion sensors? Oh, this is going to be a drag. Stay still, everybody. Let's see how this goes. Turn it off again. Oh, that's going to be a drag. Does it turn on? It's not turning off? Well, should I cry now?
Yeah, because this is wonderful.
Oh, gosh. Let's... Okay, so we're going to hit... Nobody move. Okay, so what we did is he said, tell the story you know. And I know the language of kind of architecture and color and pattern. And we'll wait, someone's in front of the slides. Yeah. Oh. Wow, we didn't know this was going to happen. Okay, so we're going to try not to move. Let's see if it comes back on. So the quilts on the left are the quilts made of this collection. Oh. Hold on. You think? Okay. So we're going...
I say just keep talking.
Okay. You can get it? Okay. So you're going to see 3 quilts made at the end that kind of start to reflect what I was doing at the beginning. I want to show you some of the buildings I make so you can understand where I'm coming from. In New York, this is a house I did in upstate New York. This is a modern house, got a lot of attention from a woman in Belgium. And she is a super minimalist. This house is lead silver, if anyone knows what that is. And she is this super intense kind of sculptural idea of a house. On the right, it's the inside. On the out is the outside. It's this big wall. And it's this super modern interior where the people I work with are become my friends. And we really start to understand each other to do special things. In addition to the modern stuff, I also work with historic hotels, right? So this is something from 1860 in Pennsylvania. When I found it, it looked like that. And then we turned it into that. Wow. And the inside is a beautiful interior of a hotel that he became a good friend of mine and became a mayor of this town. If you look at collection 2 called Log Tavern Road, that's this town, Milford, Pennsylvania. And we're going to look at that a bit. On the inside, it has this beautiful interior that we spent a lot of time to get antique furniture, and it's just stunning. This is a house in New York on the left, a townhouse that was a real piece of crap when we found it. The image on the right is not a photograph. That is a rendering. And because this house was sold before I finished it. So sometimes what we do is, if I spend 4 years on a project, we're going to take quality pictures that represent how much work I did. So we commissioned a ballet. And what we did is we hired a Lady Gaga choreographer, a beautiful ballet team, and we made a movie. And if you want to see this movie, it's called Elevation, and it's on my website, and you should check it out. It's a 3.5-minute video where we did the whole thing. We did the dancers, we had the storyboard. My assistant, Jennifer Wong, was a stunning, amazing help. She bought 28 dresses for this young lady before we picked the right one. And this is a beautiful, beautiful ballet that was commissioned for one of our projects that we did. Now, sometimes we do other things where we do a very high level of detail, and I think this might relate most closely to the quilting. If you look at this thing at the top, that was something we sculpted by hand. So see that little detail on the right? It actually started like that, out of clay and a grid. Then we cast it. We had 2 versions of it. We cast it, and then we made a medallion. So it's kind of that same type of tessellations that you design in quilting. All of this design process of these things coming together it's all the same to me. The creative process is all one thing. Now we also, part of the story is after 9/11 and the drama of New York and blah, 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 I moved to Africa for a while because I was doing these houses for very wealthy people, and I said, I can't do this anymore. So I moved to Zimbabwe, and then I came back and worked on this building in Africa. If anyone's familiar with Johannesburg, there's an area called Soweto. It's the poorest part of Africa. It's very, very dangerous. This project took 8 years. Every piece of material in this project was donated. Every professional service was donated. Nothing in this building cost money. And that is what kept it from being corrupt. So the motivations of these buildings are also very important to the type of work we do. And it's important to see it. If you look at the motifing of the windows, one Christmas, and I have, at least at this point, I don't know, Yvonne, 32 nieces and nephews, and I get them the same gift every year. If you're 18 or you're 1 year old, you get the same gift. And one year, I gave them those little music things where you make your own music paper, and then you put it in the little thing that costs like $3. Well, this motif, here, you see these windows. What we did is that's bars of music. And when we did the presentation in Africa, Remfela was there. She's the wife of, I think, she was about to be the president of South Africa. And I said, well, every building deserves a song. And so that's what we tried to do. There was one where if you play these notes, it actually represents the building. And so if you look at the motifing on this building, when we said, the idea of pattern and shape, the rhythm of this, the colors, how they come out of that, if you look at my fabric, you're going to start seeing very similar things, right? So this takes us back to this. This is the house that kind of gave me some attention, right? So the idea of the landscape and the trees, like this is called a house in the woods. And what's very important in this house, this is the same view at different times of year. That's okay. No, I appreciate you sticking with it. Thank you. And so what we did for architecture school, the trees represent the columns, and we tried to use the seasonal shifts of warm, cool, and neutral. And you'll see how that transitions back. You'll see like, oh, I get the logic, right? So that's where we started on the collection. And Debbie and Jenna and all the wonderful people at Free Spirit are the coolest people to work with. And they allow me to do these crazy things where it ombres out. On my first two collections, we had a lot of stripes. And I said, well, how do we make stripes new and cool? And they said, let's pull this off. And it has this ombre at the end. So today I'm wearing this shirt, and I'll take this off, I promise, and show you how goofy it looks. But I like it. And then we had a lot of shirts made out of the ombre stripes in the other collections. And I want to hear your opinion about those when we're finished with this in a sec. As architects, we also make sketches a lot. 25 years ago, I'm traveling around Europe. So this is kind of my sketchbook in Rome and Salzburg and Notre Dame, etc. And you'll make other types of drawings, right? You make this type of drawing. You've seen this, floor plan looks like with a rough sketch on yellow trace. And sometimes it becomes crisp, like that. Now that's the house in the woods that I showed you. It has a very curious plan. But you make them using this tool. This is a scale. And that's a ruler, if you will, and it has all different types of measurements. So what we used is we said, let's transform these into the next type of thing. And so you have the columns we've talked about, the floor plan. This is like an infinity floor plan based on it doesn't matter what it's based on. It actually has a pretty cerebral behind it. And then this is the scale, right? So it comes in this beautiful colorway that Jenna and Debbie were so helpful in helping me get it right. And so we have this ombre of this bright yellow. And I know yellow is really challenging in quilt fabric. So if you look at this, I challenge you when we have it, look at how it ombres from an icy yellow into like a golden lemony green yellow. It's really cool. Now, the final thing that you do as an architect is you do a lot of landscape work, as I do. My houses are very much in the landscape. And so we look very hard to do this kind of something that's a big swatch that can be your backing, or even like if it's a Crayola picture, right? Because these are kind of analogous color schemes. You have your warms, your neutrals, but it's not just red. It's red with pink and blue, etc. And that was one thing that we found actually quite successful, that people were using our quilt fabric, and I'll show you some, as backing when we did not actually think that was the case. So we did the warm, the cool, and the neutral. Sometimes they blended, like the green. Which one is it? Is it cool or neutral? And then there's this, these are the ombres of those. This hot pink one looks a lot better in person, I promise. And this one, this big scale, it's actually bigger than the other two. So it's kind of, there's lots of cool things you can do with border fabrics with this. And then there's this hand sketch one, these little houses, right? Because architects, we actually do doodle quite a bit. And it actually falls into a warm neutral when you see that in person. So that's the collection. I think it's 15. Debbie, how many is it? 16? 16 prints, and you kind of hit every note. It's this kind of kaleidoscope of colors. But before we do that, I'm going to have 3 more slides. The first collection was called Madison 1. And this was the building. If you've never been to New York, this is a tall tower. It terminates at the end of Madison Square Park, or Madison Avenue. And I was obsessed with the top. And I was drawing these things. I'd done a painting out of my window, and all of these things were kind of manifestations of the color patterns out of that building. Because again, I am a bit of a workaholic, and the way I was solving my workaholism at the time was these other creative endeavors, these paintings and sculpture and things like that. And it really was a life-saving thing. Ask my sister. Okay, the other thing about this was I was trying to explore this idea of dimensionality. In the first one, and I'll show you this quilt, we have it. It's this, we're gonna pull it out in a bit. This was these kind of pill shapes, and they're kind of applique. Now we designed this quilt, and this was, when you see this one here, Yvonne sewed it because I'm not very good at it. And these things are so meticulously sewn and then beautifully quilted over it. That's called Valley of the Dolls. Everyone know that campy movie? These women hopped up on drugs. Sign me up. All right, and then this is the one that Yvonne designed. And we spent a lot of time getting these colors right. You know what? This became really popular in this area, and we were finding that a lot of people were wanting it and doing it in their own little colorways. Thrilled to see people actually liking it. Oh, hey, Julie. Oh, yeah, and okay, and we're gonna introduce you to Julie. She's been such a wonderful help as we develop this. This partly is part of Madison 1. I was looking at which is the best seller of Madison 1. This one on the right. But this was second, and this is my favorite. And if you like this idea of these ombre stripes, make it known. Tell us. Say, hey, we like that. We want to see more. We got to hear that. So this was collection 2. These are these motifs of these hand-drawn things. And you know, when Debbie said, hey, Billy reached out to us, what I had done is made this weird portfolio of everything that's non-architectural. I'm going to show you some pieces of it in a minute. And it's these little cast plaster houses and things that I was making. But these are all, this is the collection, this is collection 2. This is Log Tavern Road. And what we were making of it is like, this is Finding Your Way Home. We actually have that quilt here today. And I'm going to show you some other things we made. Oh, so this is Missy Stroob. Missy Stroob is my friend's in that town, his sister. And I said, Missy, do me a favor. You're going to make our first quilt out of this fabric. And so I gave it to her, and I said, you can make whatever you want. She goes, I'm going to make this Drungard Path. And she came up with it, and I said, you know what this looks like? This looks like the rose window of Chartres Cathedral. And if you look at them side by side, the color story and how she did this black, and I didn't like the black at the beginning, I have to tell you. I was like, ugh. But then when I saw it, I said, she's a lot more sophisticated than me. So she's really smart and knows what she's doing. And so these little things, what was happening, I was obsessed with these color stripes. And I brought this swatch just because it's my favorite one of that thing, and I wasn't brave enough to make a shirt out of it. But they look beautifully packaged in these kind of quilt, these are like yard bundles. I kind of made these to see if they look sexy enough to sell. And then these little pillows that I'd made at home, and they're hand quilted. I brought the actual pillows here, and I made these myself, kind of like with the hand stitching. Have a look at them, and I'm curious to see what you think about them later. Okay, we're almost done. So this is our final collection. This is all the SKUs of it. I hope you're loving it. We have you can see the kind of 3 colorways at the top, right? Everybody gets it, warm, cool, neutral. These are the beautiful quilts, and here's where it came full circle for me. I was looking at these things, and I said, oh, look at that. If you squint your eyes, the color story is exactly the same. I'm still doing the same. I was like, why am I coming back to that thing? This is a quilt I made for a buddy of mine. This is the Kaboom quilt. It's kind of like Shockwave. But it's this, all of my stuff was having this super saturated bullseye red. And, you know, you can't fight what you do. It's what was coming out. And the final thing is, so this was maybe the 3rd or 4th quilt I made. But remember those weird things I told you I showed Debbie? I was making sculptures out of found objects. I had a rat in my office, and I went to Home Depot, and I said, these are the most beautiful mousetraps I've ever seen. I bought 60 mousetraps, and I became obsessed with them. And you can't tell me, actually there's a lot of graphic design in a mousetrap, and they're very pragmatically designed. Look at that flying geese motif. Look at the mouse head in the V, and look at the scale of the pieces. And if you do this long enough as an artist, you start seeing patterns in your work. And that's what I'm saying. You know what? Do what's true to you, and people will catch on to it. So we did catch the rat. It was sad. So this was in the 2 final slides. So these are some of the images I showed Debbie that fateful day a long time ago. Sculptures. I was doing fabric silk with woven pieces of glass in it. Islamic geometry, explosions, thread and found nails from 200 years ago. I was trying to develop some toys, and that's how it came back. So we started with the things that you make in architecture school, and we ended in the fabric designs that an architect makes. So that's the end of our slides. Okay? So I'm going to show you, we're going to do, how are we on time? We're good on time? Okay, so we have a couple of show and tells. One of the things with collection one, and you guys got to tell us what you think. What I'm really interested in, this is the first pattern we ever designed. This is collection one, SKU one, and I didn't know if this was a thing. But this is where they were really encouraging us. This is Debbie saying, we believe in you, do it. And it really resonated with a lot of folks. And so we kind of trusted ourselves after that. We then started making, the other side. The back is what I like. Yeah, and so this is that quilt. And I encourage you to come up and look at it. Look how it's made. And the idea is, how do you start connoting shape with one-dimensional fabric pieces? And it has to do with the ombre and the gradient of color. You know, like when you're teaching architecture school, you're always talking about space and light and perception. You know, architecture and design is kind of like therapy. Perception is truth. So if you can make the perception there, you have a very truthful design. So we do a lot with that. With collection two, this was a struggle. But we needed let's just have this be the right direction. So this was just a sampler we made, and I was trying to experiment. One of the things that we were struggling with was, how do you challenge someone to want to buy the whole collection, right? It's really tough. For me, what I found, and we're going to show you a quilt after that Yvonne developed, there are these mini collections within the collection. If you look at architecture school, you're going to go, oh, I love all the columns, I love the floor plans, and I love the landscape. Red, blue, green, right? And they're consistent. The colors are almost exactly the same dye. You can put together a whole kit of a Crayola crayon box with those. So, but when you have such a variety, it's a challenge, and so we always want to play it against a neutral. But Yvonne's really smart. Let me show you what she did. She said, Billy, your colors drive me nuts. And she says, I'm going to speak for you, is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, hold this. She said, I'm a little modest. What is this one called, Yvonne? Tea Party. So Yvonne's favorite place in New York is, what's our tea place? Tea and Sympathy. She also goes to Alice's Teacup, and she buys these exotic teas and all this. Anyway, so this is called Tea Party, and I think, was this your first Dresden plate?
Yes.
Yeah, and so we worked really hard trying to say which two go together to kind of tell a color story. And this is kind of an experiment in color theory, where you have always mostly a warm and a cool, playing it against each other. This is what I would call kind of a mini collection within a collection, because there's part of the collection that's not in this quilt, but it's still just as cool and interesting. And someone like Yvonne has a more refined taste. I'm kind of a loud guy, if you haven't gotten a taste of it, and she's a little more modest. But it's really stunning. Oh, and I convinced her. This was a challenge. Hold on.
No, but I loved it.
Okay.
After it went on, I just loved it.
Okay, and I said, here's the thing. I want to seduce people into understanding the back can be just as exciting as the front. What's great about this particular one is the repeat is so hard to determine. It's almost as interesting, even though this is a two pieces put together, right? That it's still, hold that out. Okay. I love the idea of kind of calmness and chaos. You know, that's what makes it fun for me, and that's really what I'm into. Okay, so let's put that aside. Thanks. Now the other one we did there, we got this pattern at Julie's store. What was the name of this pattern? Lattice? Lattice. Okay, so Julie has been great and really helpful. Did you guys quilt this too, right? Okay, so the sewing on this is horrible because I made it, and I didn't realize that maybe taffeta is not the best fabric to do this, but I wanted something shiny. So anyway, you know, I like a little bling, but boy, it was a pain in the butt to sew. But I love the kind of chaotic nature of this, and this is also just a subset of four fabrics of that, and we were trying to get the motifing, and what I loved about it is, so Julie's team is really smart because they were convincing me that this kind of light celery thread really works with this, and you know, sometimes I have to be talked into stuff, and it really looks great. So what we're doing with our work and how we're blending the architecture and the fabric design is every photo shoot that we do for a project now will have a quilt. And we've had, because the clients come to my office and are wondering, what are you doing? We have people that are already like commissioning a quilt for their project. So we have 2 shoots coming up before the end of the year. It's not going to be our fabric, it's going to be this one, we're using this one. And then we're making another quilt for another project. questions before I just show you our third collection?
The backing on that one, is that piece?
This?
The other one, the one you, that first one, is that piece or is that?
This?
Yeah.
No, this is the fabric. So this is 40, where's Debbie? Yeah, like, but some of these could be a big thing, but this is like a regular 40, 44. Yeah, but the pattern is so big, it gives you enough life. This is kind of like what I was talking about, the chaos against the calm. That's what makes it kind of cool. And if you like that stuff, you got to tell me, because I don't know unless you tell me. All right. Do we want to, Debbie, do we just want to do show and tell, or what are we doing next?
Do show and tell, and then we'll pick winners.
Okay, so these are really pretty. Let's see how they turn out. I was reluctant with the green. Beautiful. I think these are going to be, oh, sorry. I think these are going to be the big, people get excited about it. It's punchy, 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 but just stunning, vivid color. That's a winner. I like it.
It is a winner.
Yeah. We have it in, we have a red. I'm going to show you.
And a neutral.
Yeah, here's the neutral. It is really hard to get these colors right, I gotta tell you. There's a lot of work that is, it looks kind of accidental. It ain't accidental.
No, it's not, is it?
No. I can take questions while I'm doing show and tell. Anybody have a question? Okay.
You mentioned you were going to show us your shirt.
Oh,
Good, thank you. And I didn't pay her for that.
okay, I have to tell you. No. So here's the deal. Across the street from Madison Square Park, so I'm like Googling, custom shirt makers in New York. You know who makes this shirt? These are the shirt makers for Broadway shows. I should give a shout out to them. It's called Seago Shirts. And so I'm going in there and they're asking like, where's Phil Spector's shirt? I'm like, Phil Spector's been dead. And I was like, oh. So I thought like they were doing dead people's shirts. But, and then and so they made these shirts for me, and they were so nice and kind, and they were thrilled just to see these things. It was kind of part of the show. And I've never been to a place. Oh yeah, that's great.
Well, it'd be great on Broadway.
We'll see where it ends up, right? Any other questions as we go?
I have a personal one.
A personal.
First we came out with William Roo, and then now we're Billy Roo.
Oh.
Have you always gone back and forth between your names, or is there
Well, here's the deal. Okay, so my real name is William Roo, and my architecture business is William Roo, because I just did it that way. I don't know, like 15 years ago when I started. But we were concerned that people would get them confused, because I didn't have a website that was about fabric. And what happens is after my clients get to know me, or my friends and family, no one calls me William. They call me Billy. So what we decided is, quilting is kind of a family thing, so let's be more casual about it. And the folks at Free Spirit were cool with letting me just change how we represent it, and I didn't, and it worked out okay.
I still call him William sometimes.
Sometimes when I get in trouble.
I was just in here.
Any other questions? We have a few more. Okay, in ink.
Do you use like Illustrator, or as hard as
Okay, so this has been a struggle, right? So I started with photo manipulations with Photoshop, and it was all photo representations of my work and different kind of manifestations of that. The thing is, you have to do a universal dial. It's really challenging. You have to usually use digital prints. So on the next collection, they were still digitally printed, but on the second collection, but I did use Illustrator for some. And this last collection, Architecture School, is about half and half. So I taught myself the software. Here's the thing. So I was working in, I have my office in New York. I'm a sole practitioner, and I never had time to teach myself new software. But when I was teaching at the University of Oklahoma, I had a lot of time. So I was doing some other things. And also you gotta, keep the kids busy. Photoshop, Illustrator, anything to get our hands on. We did graphics, hand drawing. That one illustration of those houses, that was done by hand. The keying and stuff. What's that? No, it was just pen and ink, drawing it, scanning it in, but it was a photo manipulation of literally hand art.
Doesn't only,
everybody put
what kind of things do you do to help support retailers in
in selling the product? What kind of products?
Well, we've done two things so far, and it's only because people have asked. There was in a little town near my mother's town. They had part of the quilt. What's it called? The quilt hop. Shop. They hosted us to come, and I was there for 2 hours, and they said that's great. And I came in, and there were people who came in, and then there was we did one other thing. Julie's been a great support, where she has stuff out, and I've been there, but we haven't. This is the first time I'm in Texas actually doing anything quilt related. So I'm open to going to talk. Or what are we doing in February?
That's the about
There's a quilt guild thing. So I'm meeting with their quilt guild to do kind of a show.
He's going to be in the show. I'm going to have all of his fabric, and he's going to be in the booth next to me and my booth.
Oh yes, and we made some patterns, and they're named after my grandmother. So we have a little brand, not brand, what do you call it? It's called Matilda, just because we're so sentimental, crazy people. And any quilt that Yvonne and I make, Free Spirit doesn't do it because they don't test them, right? So they said, if we make them called Matilda, and it's our little thing, we send them out for free. And so it's things that Yvonne and I make that is kind of dear to our heart, like this one, the pills one, and that one is something we made, and people say they want it. Here it is, and I'm going to email you the PDF, and you figure out how you want to package it, and you don't have to pay us anything.
So we just email
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
So your website or?
Well, I can get mine, if you Google my name, like William Roo, you go to my architecture website, and my email is just like wroo@wroo.com. Right, if you go to info, it hits me too. Again, I'm a one-man show, and so it comes to me, and everyone, again, I don't know what response this is going to be, but so far it's been, I have the most, I won't share it with you now, but like sentimental stories where people will call and they want to share what they've made out of your fabric. It's touching. So anyone that calls, I help do my best in helping.
This kit here, we kitted this, and I can't tell you.
So this was popular at your
It's
store?
very popular.
Okay. Okay, are we done? Okay.
Yeah.
How many
It's the
do I
next
have?
Schoolhouse, two.
Keen Concepts Quilting in Alaska.
And cottage